one of Nottinghamshire's most notorious criminals, has been jailed for 24 years for heading up a gang which dealt vast quantities of high-purity cocaine and heroin. Nottingham Crown Court heard how the Bestwood group, which was led by Craig Moran, used guns and encrypted phones in a bid to evade capture. When he began his fresh illegal enterprise, the 42-year-old gang leader had not only been released from prison for being the getaway driver in an armed robbery in Arnold which saw the jeweller Marion Bates, may she rest in peace, murdered, a killing believed to have been organised by a kingpin from Nottingham who was jailed for 35 years for ordering the shootings of John and Joan Sterland on the Lincolnshire coast. At the 3-day sentencing hearing, it was told how Moran fled to Marbella in Spain, where he was kneecapped and cut to the face with a so-called Chelsea smile before fleeing to Dubai, where he was arrested and extradited back to the UK to face justice. Jailing the 10-strong drugs gang for a combined total of more than 95 years, the judge, Michael Orty KC, said this was the trafficking of vast quantities of coke, heroin and cannabis, as well as the transfer and storage of prohibited weapons, and any rational assessment would lead any court to conclude that this operation was close to the source of the importation of the drugs. He said it was a highly dedicated criminal cartel which flooded the streets of Nottingham and the East Midlands, and one expert witness used a football analogy as it being a mid-table Premier League club. Drugs are undoubtedly the most wicked and pernicious drugs on the street, causing a never-ending cycle of pain, misery and death. The cost of all this suffering is paid for by society, which is left to pick up the pieces and those whose lives are shattered. The prosecutor, Christopher Teherani KC, told the hearing how a number of trials involving many defendants had led to this week's sentencing. He says, giving an overview of the operation, he said, the police investigation covered 2 organised crime groups, one in Bestwood area of the city and one in Manchester. Craig Moran headed up the Nottinghamshire organised crime group, and Geordie Duran the one in the northwest. Their primary business was the supply of Class A drugs on a large scale, and the drugs gang's business was linked to ammunition, firearms and EncroChat phones. Said a sawn-off shotgun and 2 handguns were recovered, along with 131 rounds of ammunition. The number of drugs runs were made between Manchester and Nottingham, and on one occasion 4 kilos of coke with a purity of around 85% was recovered. He said the value of them, depending on how they would have been sold, were around between £100,000 to £200,000 for the coke and around £40,000 to £100,000 for the heroin. Large sums of money were passed through the hands of the 2 groups. Mr. Tarani said when Moran realised the net was closing in on him and his gang in 2018, he fled to Spain and then to the United Arab Emirates. There he was stabbed, shot in both legs and slit to his face from mouth to his ears in what is determined as a smile. He then left there and fled to the UAE, where he was then extradited back to the UK. So Moran, he pleaded guilty to charges including conspiracy to supply Class A and B drugs and conspiracy to transfer a prohibited weapon. His previous convictions include 13 years for being the getaway driver in the 2003 armed robbery on Time Centre in Arnold, which saw 64-year-old Mrs. Bates gunned down and killed. A hugely respected campaigning widower, Victor Bates, was 80 when he died in 2019 and never got over the murder of his beloved wife, his daughter said at the time. And Pete Williams, who was 19 at the time of the Arnold murder, was jailed for life, but another suspect, James Brody, was never caught. So going back into this current case, so launched in 2017, Operation Encyclic probe an upsurge in drug and gun-related crime in and around the Bestwood estate. The investigation linked various incidents to Moran, who upon his release from prison for previous crimes was arranged the delivery of guns and significant quantities of drugs into Nottingham. Nottingham Crown Court heard the investigation was launched when a sawn-off shotgun was discovered in a house in Bestwood in 2017. DNA found on the weapon helped police uncover a major drugs and weapons line between Manchester and Nottingham. As I said, this included Moran, who headed up the Nottingham operation, and Jodie Danson, who operated the one in Salford. A month later, officers recovered 2 handguns inside a car abandoned in Bestwood, which is close to the home of Moran's cousin, Callum Sims. In April 2018, police executed a warrant in Bestwood at the home of Lee Hudson, who was Moran's nephew. Officers found cannabis plants and growing equipment, and there's also £13,000 in cash, a cash counting machine, 2 encrypted mobile phones, and 131 rounds of ammunition. East Midlands Special Operations Unit were brought in and started to build up a picture of what was happening, and it was becoming increasingly obvious that Moran was the key player in bringing guns and drugs into the Bestwood area. Throughout the investigation, police uncovered a significant number of courier trips between Manchester and Nottingham by Moran's gang. In July 2018, police intercepted a vehicle near the M1 Junction 26, which was being driven by Sims, where a JD sports bag containing 4 kilos of coke and 2 kilos of heroin was recovered. Following this interception, Moran realised the net was closing in, and he fled to Dover before making his way through France and into Spain, and that's where in Marbella his criminal lifestyle caught up with him, and as I stated, he was shot through the hands and kneecaps and received a serious wound to his face. Again, he made a run for it, this time in Dubai, where he wrongly thought that Nottinghamshire police would never find him. He was hiding out, paying cash in hand, attempting to keep his lavish lifestyle on borrowed time as his drugs empire was crumbling around him. Back in Nottinghamshire, detectives were busy dismantling his crime gang one by one before they organised Moran's arrest and extradited him back to the UK. 2020, Dubai Special Forces entered his place of residence and handed him back to 2 Nottinghamshire police officers waiting at the airport. As I've stated, he's today been jailed for 24 years. So others that have also been sentenced are Jody Danson. He's 43 from Manchester, got a total of 16 years. You got Callum Sims, who's 37 of Nottingham. You got 14 years. You got Lee Hudson, who's 26 from Nottingham, got 12 years. You got Dean Hudson, 25 from Nottingham, got 3 years. You got John Newens, who's 43 from Salford, got 3 years and 4 months. You got Richard Jones from Manchester, who's 51. You got 8 years. You got Darren Bexon, who's 39. Got a total of 12 years. You got Craig Bailey, got 15 months, and you got Callum Kirk, who got 2 years, which was suspended for 2 years. Judge Orty said in his remarks this was a highly sophisticated criminal cartel that was dedicated to flooding the streets of Nottingham and surrounding areas with vast quantities of Class A, which had caused misery and pain. Following the sentencing hearing, Assistant Chief Constable Rob Griffin of Nottinghamshire Police said this was a massive undertaking by a very skilled and determined investigation team to dismantle the gang, which was responsible for bringing large amounts of drugs into Nottingham as well as firearms and ammunition. He said we made great strides in Bestwood to get rid of the area. This type of activity, and Moran and his gang were foolish to think they could bring it back. The hefty sentences given today are not only a testament to an impressive investigation carried out by the East Midlands Operations Unit, but also the power of collaborative law enforcement on a national and international scale. It serves as a strong warning to others who think they can run drugs operations in our city and county that we will have all the investigative tools we need to take the so-called drugs empires away from them. But he also sends out a warning to him. He says, this is not the end of this particular case. The proceeds of Crime Act, we will now seek to identify and seize any assets amounted from the running of this illicit enterprise to ensure those responsible are not only stripped of their freedom, but also of any profits made through their criminal activities. Guys, this is a new story coming in. It's your boy GT. Keep it locked, keep it real.